Hare Krishna everyone, welcome back to the reading of Dialectic, Spiritualism, a Vedic view on Western philosophy by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Presently this book is published under the name Beyond Illusion and Doubt, and we are Shravanam Diaries podcast. I'm your host Sulalita Devidasi, and we are continuing to read chapter number 9, Darwin. Disciple. They try to trace the origin by means of excavation, and they have found that gradually through the years, the animal forms are evolving toward increasingly more complex and specialized forms, from invertebrates to fish, then to amphibians, then to reptiles and insects, to mammals and birds, and finally to humans. In that process, many species, like the dinosaurs, appeared, flourished, and then disappeared forever, became extinct. Eventually, primitive ape-like creatures appeared, and from them, man gradually developed. Srila Prabhupada, is the theory that the human body comes from the monkeys? Disciple, humans and monkeys are related, they come from the same. Srila Prabhupada, related? Everything is related. That is another thing. But if the monkey body is developing into a human body, then why, after the human body is developed, doesn't the monkey species cease to exist? Disciple, the humans and the monkeys are branches of the same tree. Srila Prabhupada, yes, and both are now existing. Similarly, we say that at the time the evolutionists say life began, there were human beings existing. Disciple, they find no evidence for that. Srila Prabhupada, why no evidence? Disciple, in the ground, by excavation, they find no evidence in the ground. Srila Prabhupada, is the ground the only evidence? Is there no other evidence? Disciple, the only evidence they accept is the testimony of their senses. Srila Prabhupada, but they still cannot prove that there was no human being at the time they say life originated. They cannot prove that. Disciple, it appears that in certain layers of earth there are remains of ape-like men. Ape-like men. Srila Prabhupada, ape-like men or man-like apes are still existing now alongside human beings. If one thing has been developed by the transformation of another thing, then that original thing should no longer be in existence. When in this way a cause has produced its effect, the cause ceases to exist. But in this case we see that the cause is still present, that there are still monkeys and apes. Disciple, but monkeys did not cause man. Both came from the same common ancestor. That is their account. Srila Prabhupada, we say that we all come from God, the same ancestor, the same father. The original father is Krishna. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 14.5, Sarva yonishu kaunteya, quote, of all, of as many forms as there are, aham bija pradah pita, I am the seed-giving father, unquote. So what is your objection to this? Disciple: well, if I examine the layers of earth, I find in the deepest layers no evidence. Srila Prabhupada: you are packed up with layers of earth. That's all. That is the boundary of your knowledge. But that is not knowledge. There are many other evidences. Disciple: but surely if men were living millions of years ago, they would have left evidence, tangible evidence, behind them. I could see their remnants. Srila Prabhupada: so I say that in advanced human societies, bodies are burned after death, cremated. So where does your excavator get his bones? Disciple: well, that's possible, but Srila Prabhupada, according to our Vedic system, the body is burned to ashes after death. Where, therefore, would the rascal get the bones? Animals are not burned. Their bones remain, but human beings are burned, and therefore they cannot find the bones. Disciple: I'm just saying that it appears through layer after layer of deposits in the earth that biological forms tend to progress from simple and primitive forms to more and more complex and specialized ones until finally civilized man appears. Srila Prabhupada: but at the present moment both simple and complex forms are existing. One did not develop into the other. For example, my childhood body has developed into my adult body, and the child's body is no longer there. So if the higher complex species developed from the simpler lower species, then we should see no simple species. But all species are now existing simultaneously. When I see all 8,400,000 species of life existing, what is the question of development? Each species exists now, and it existed long ago. You might not have seen it, but you have no proper source of knowledge. You might have missed it. That is another thing. Disciple: but all the evidence shows otherwise. 500 million years ago, there were no land animals. There were only aquatics. Srila Prabhupada: that is nonsense. You cannot give a history of 500 million years. 500 million years. 500. Okay, so you cannot give a history of 500 million years. Where is the history of 500 million years? You are simply imagining. You say historical evidence, but where is your evidence? You cannot give a history for more than 3,000 years, and you are speaking about 500 million. This is all nonsense. Disciple: if I dig far into the ground, layer by layer, Srila Prabhupada, by dirt you are calculating 500 million years? It could be 10 years. You cannot give the history of human society past 3,000 years. So how can you speak of 500 million years ago? Where were you then? Were you there so you can say that all these species were not there? This is imagination. In this way, everyone can imagine and say some nonsense. We accept evolution, but not that the forms of the species are changing. The bodies are all already there, but the soul is evolving by changing bodies and by transmigrating from one body to another. I have evolved from my childhood body to my adult body, and now my childhood body is extinct. But there are many other children. Similarly, all the species are now existing simultaneously, and they were all there in the past. For example, if you are traveling in a train, you find first class, second class, third class. They're all existing. If you pay a higher fare and enter the first class carriage, you cannot say, now the first class is created. It was always existing. So the defect of the evolutionists is that they have no information of the soul. The soul is evolving, transmigrating from one compartment to another compartment, simply changing place. The Padma Purana says that there are 8,400,000 species of life, and the soul evolves through them. This evolutionary process we accept. The soul evolves from aquatics to plants, to insects, to birds, to animals, and then to the human forms. But all these forms are already there. They do not change. One does not become extinct and another survive. All of them are existing simultaneously. Disciple. But Darwin says that there are many species like dinosaurs that are seen to be extinct. Srila Prabhupada, what has he seen? He is not so powerful that he can see everywhere or everything. His power to see is limited, and by that limited power he cannot conclude that one species is extinct. That is not possible. No real scientist will accept that. After all the senses by which you gather knowledge are limited. So how can you say that this is finished or that is extinct? You cannot see. You cannot search out. The Earth's circumference is 25,000 miles. Have you searched through all the layers of rock and soil over the whole Earth? Have you excavated all those places? Disciple, no. Srila Prabhupada, therefore, our first charge against Darwin is this. He says there were no human beings millions of years ago. That is not a fact. We now see human beings existing along with all other species, and it should be concluded that this situation always existed. Human life has always been there. Darwin cannot prove that there were no human life millions of years ago. Disciple, we don't see any dinosaurs existing. Srila Prabhupada, you do not see because you have no power to see. Your senses are very limited, so what you see or don't see cannot be authoritative. So many people, the majority of people, say, I don't see God. Shall we accept then that there is no God? Are we crazy for being devotees of God? Disciple, no, but dinosaurs. Srila Prabhupada, but simply by dinosaurs being missing, you cannot make your case. What about all the other species? Disciple, many others are also extinct. Srila Prabhupada, say, I accept that many are extinct. Because the evolutionary process means that As an earlier species gradually changes into a later species, the earlier vanishes, becomes extinct. But we see that many monkeys are still there. Man evolved from the simians, but simians have not disappeared. Monkeys are there, and men are there. Disciple: but still I'm not convinced. If we make geological investigations all over the world, not just here and there, but in many parts of the world, and in every case we find the same thing. Srila Prabhupada: but I say you have not studied all over the world. Has Darwin studied all the continents on this planet? Has he gone down into the depths of the seas and there excavated all the layers of the earth? No, so his knowledge is imperfect. This is the relative world, and here everyone speaks with relative knowledge. Therefore, we should accept knowledge from a person who is not within this relativity. Disciple: actually, Darwin hit upon his theory because of what he observed on his voyage in 1835 to the Galapagos Islands off the coast of South America. He found there species that exist nowhere else. Srila Prabhupada: that means he has not seen all the species. He has not traveled all over the universe. He has seen one island, but he has not seen the whole creation. So how can he determine what species exist and don't exist? He has studied one part of this earth, but there are many millions of planets. He has not seen all of them. He has not excavated the depths of all the planets. So how can he conclude this is nature? He has not seen everything, nor is it possible for any human being to see everything. Disciple: let's just confine ourselves to this planet. Srila Prabhupada: no, why should we? Nature is not only on this planet. Disciple: because you said that on this planet there were complex forms of living beings millions and millions of years ago. Srila Prabhupada: we are not talking about this planet, but about anywhere. You are referring to nature. Nature is not limited or confined to this planet. You cannot say that. Nature, material nature, includes millions of universes, and in each and every universe there are millions of planets. If you have studied only this planet, your knowledge is insufficient. Disciple: but you said before that millions of years ago on this planet there were horses, elephants, civilized man. Srila Prabhupada: yes. Disciple: but from hundreds of different sources there is no evidence. Srila Prabhupada: I say they are existing now. Man, horses, snakes, insects, trees, so why not millions of years ago? Disciple: because there is no evidence. Srila Prabhupada: that doesn't mean you limit your study to one planet. That is not full knowledge. Disciple: I just want to find out for the time being about Srila Prabhupada. Why the time being? If you're not perfect in your knowledge, then why should I accept your theory? That is my point. Disciple: well, if you claim that millions of years ago there were complex forms of life on this planet, Srila Prabhupada, whether on this planet or on another planet, that is not the point. The point is that all species exist and keep on existing by the arrangement of nature. We learn from the Vedic texts that there are 8,400,000 species established. They may be in your neighborhood or they may be in my neighborhood. The number and types are fixed. But if you simply study your neighborhood, it is not perfect knowledge. Evolution we admit, but your evolutionary theory is not perfect. Our theory of evolution is perfect. From the Vedas we know that there are 8,400,000 forms of bodies provided by nature, but the soul is the same in all. In spite of the different types of body, there is no change in the soul, and therefore the Bhagavad Gita 5.18 says that one who is wise, a Pandita, does not see the species or the class. He sees oneness, equality. Pandita Samadarshana, one who sees to the bottom, sees the soul, and he does not find there any difference between all the species. To the bottom, soul. Disciple. So Darwin and other material scientists who have no information about the soul, Srila Prabhupada, they're missing the whole point. Jai. We're going to stop here for today on this important point. So, thank you so much for tuning in today. The link to this book is in the description, and we shall see you next time. Hare Krishna.